Greetings and welcome to the Headhunter Show. You can only find this only on KTN Home. My name is Laban Cliff, and it's always a pleasure to have you on board in these exciting programs. And thank you very much for the feedback that we've been receiving on our online platforms regarding the guests you'd like us to feature, ideas that you're actually getting from the show, and how you're developing yourself both in your career and in your chosen field, and even just in your leadership skills as well. So as we continue to engage thought leaders, especially in the people development space, today we're honored and glad to actually focus on this space that perhaps the youth who are just trying to really, get to the top and really be that ambitious professional. How do you get there? And we're honored and glad to have none other than Martin Openda, who's actually served as a headhunter himself and in the executive search field. And today we're just going to pick his brain in terms of, how exactly can, that young person who's quite focused and quite ambitious in the corporate space, and how do they get ahead? Take a look at the profile. Ladies and gentlemen, introducing Martin Openda.
Thank you very much, Laban Cliff. It's a pleasure to be here. Always nice to be in conversation with you.
Great. And personally, of course, from our audience, they'll always say, oh, well, we've had, of course, previous practitioners who've come on board and they said, okay, well, can we just have somebody a bit youthful and who can just, just help us understand? Because all these guys look like they've made it and they took a while to make it. So thank you for accepting the invitation to come. And I think the question just starts right from there, because if you look at it in the corporate circles, there's always the ambition, there's always the energy amongst the young, vibrant, shall I say, just below mid-level management, for instance, who just want to scale and want to get ahead. So speak to that person. What exactly can they look out for? How can they be ahead of the game in the corporate ladder?
Thank you very much for that question, Laban. And if you had asked me this question a few years ago, the answer would have been very different. It would have been stay where you are, do your time, learn from others. And in some sense, the answer is still the same, but the process is somewhat accelerated. Why do I say it's accelerated? Because the future of, or what we used to call the future of work, is now here. It is now present with us. And with that comes a lot of things from the perspective of learning and development, which is key and critical to growth. It's all about reskilling, retooling, and understanding where you want to go and how I can get there. And so the value of mentorship is, you can't replace that with anything. But right now we have had, over the past 15 or so years, things coming up around micro-learning, being able to pick up any skill within 1 month, 2 months, on platforms like Udemy, Coursera, and the like. And mainstream universities, more recently, are starting to pick up on this trend and give you, a 6-month course that you do in a very specific area. And so before, instead of, you want to do marketing, you want to shape your career in the marketing space, you'd have to do a whole course with either KIM or any other university. But now you can pick very specific areas of marketing and become an expert in that. And it's critical, because in the future of work and conversations around the future of work, we will have to understand the fields that we want to get into, but because business being business and being having a need to excel in a specific area, would want more well-rounded people, more well-rounded individuals to be able to understand not just their area, but how their area of work then affects the rest of the business. And what does that mean? For you to get ahead, you must add to your skill. It wasn't enough that you have your bachelor's degree in XYZ. How else are you learning about, being commercially aware? Have you picked up a few courses in finance? Do you know what marketing is? And can you use it within your own course? As a recruiter, how do I position and place a job? How do I, as a headhunter, how do I sell the right opportunity to the right person? A lot of the times, the work we used to do, because you're from the field also, was positioning a job in front of someone who was not even thinking about moving. And it's your job then to sell them this opportunity.
But one would argue that you only position those jobs to, the folks who've earned their salt in the industry.
Yeah.
But you forget the youth.
No. So that's where I'm coming from, and that's where I was going. Maybe I took a long tangent, but the point is, in today's world, it's not enough to have just one qualification and be satisfied with that, and that's how you're going to grow. You need to be able to expand your skill set. You need to be able to put yourself out there and network. So social media is no longer just a place to go and have fun. It's actually a place to network. And you know, using that skill set and using that understanding to have your LinkedIn profile speak for you even before you arrive there, to share your thoughts. Anyone can be a thought leader now. I can write on a vlog, on a blog, and people can pick me up from there. And that is how you move ahead. And so being also very conscious and very deliberate about the things you do on social media and how you use social media to accelerate yourself. Those are becoming key things and key messagings to the youth, I would say. So don't be satisfied with where you are in as far as I have this skill set. Always be on the lookout for what's new, where do you want to go. Have that vision, and there are very many opportunities open towards growing that skill set and making something for yourself. And you know, the way we've been talking and discussing work and how to do work, we are no longer competitive in as far, or competing rather, with my neighbor who's here in Nairobi or here in Kisii. I'm competing with the person sitting in Kigali, because employers are no longer just hiring locally, they're hiring globally.
It's interesting you mentioned that, actually. I've seen some startups and you know, keen on that remote work, and they say, you know what, we're based out of London, but you're willing to have you in Nairobi, Ghana, in the UK as well. And I was baffled, you know, to actually see that there's a keen interest, especially from young, ambitious startups, to, you know, have talent across the globe as well.
Yep, and that's a key pulling factor, because then, you know, the pandemic has really accelerated a lot of things. But really it was the onset of the fourth industrial revolution, and it was inevitable that then remote working would come into play. Before COVID, for instance, Skype was always there. We had this ability to interconnect, but with COVID came an acceleration in you know, teams improving their ability to connect people and to connect teams globally. You had Zoom coming in. You have other local examples of connected working spaces. And you have the idea of shared office spaces that is coming into play. And so, you know, I can be hired in, you know, my head office is in London, but I'm working in an equally great office space sitting in Kenya because of this shared office concept. And all of these things are coming together in a time when, again, knowledge is ubiquitous, it's readily available, and it's up to me as an individual to decide what I want to take up and where I want to go. And essentially, for anyone at this place and this time, why I want to also just put this across, not just being a youth discussion, is those OGs, those older folk who are still, you know, between the age of 40, 40 is not old, but between 40 and 55, who are still active in the workspace, also need to grow. They also need to develop. So the challenge is to both sides. You know, I need to grow my skill as a youth to be able to be attractive to the employer. The employers also need their own branding to be attractive, or to attract this new skill set that's coming out. I'm a remote, you know, employer. Please.
Martin, I think we're just going on a quick break. But what really baffles me is that, you know, on this side you're sitting with, Laban, they're not jobs out there. Then once you're sitting with corporate leaders, they tell you, you know what, the search for talent is so dire, and there's always a need to look for the right people. So when we come back after the break, the question is, how do you get yourself to be the right person to actually be headhunted and to be on Martin's list, for instance? So stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back, and yes, keep tweeting, keep sharing your thoughts with us on the social media handles on your screen. So we continue the conversation with Martin Openda, a headhunter himself, by the way. And the question that we asked before we went to the break is, how do you get yourself on the headhunters list, especially now to that youth? Because let's put the OGs, as we call them, aside. And this is just to that young, ambitious person. Speak to them.
So the future belongs to the knowledge seekers. That might have been overplayed. And I think it's just that the way we seek knowledge now is what's going to place you in a different position. Curiosity, hunger for understanding, sliding into DMs in the right way is what gets you onto the list. The right DMs.
LinkedIn DMs.
Exactly the point. But it's why I say knowledge seekers, because then when I know what I want to do, and which is where the key thing around mentorship is, helping the young person understand what's out there and how to get it. Once you understand what you want to do, then connecting yourself to the right people, and that only comes through seeking knowledge, being hungry to understand what's happening, who's doing what I want to do, and trying to link yourself to them. And so using the platforms such as LinkedIn to email anyone. When I was a little bit younger, there are people who I used to look up to and say, oh my goodness, one conversation with this person would be great. And LinkedIn has brought that to me. I have emailed a lot of people who otherwise I would never have spoken to, sitting across the pond, and down south, up north to the east. My job as a headhunter has allowed me to speak to people, pick up the phone and speak to people that I would never have had access to because of finding them on these social media platforms. But so for the young person seeking to be able to land on a headhunter's list or a recruitment list, step one is finding out what you want to do and start understanding and learning from the people who've gone ahead of you and positioning yourself in such a way that I can find you. If I can't find you, then it becomes a lot more difficult. I have to sift through 1,000 CVs to be able to get to you. It's so much easier if you're already on the platform, already seeking the knowledge, already talking about it, doing your little thought leadership pieces. You don't have to be an expert at the area that you want to get into, but you have to be curious about it. Ask questions on your platform, have debates. Someone talks about something, comment on it. 3 sentences. What that does is that it brings you to the surface, and I can see the hunger you have. Because now what we're hiring for is not necessarily the skill set. I can teach technical skills. I've worked for the Big Four. I've worked in PwC, I've worked in KPMG, and what they teach you is the technical, but what they can't teach you is the attitude. They can't teach you and give you the hunger to be able to serve your client. So it's all about reskilling, retooling. On my platform, African Retooled.
Yeah, you have like young, ambitious talent, and they really want to get into the space. Then,
Exactly.
There's just you actually feel like there's more like a miscommunication, a mismatch of sorts.
There is that.
And I think you've tried to really address that with the African Retool podcast, which you should all look out, by the way, and subscribe and listen, because through that you also get to have that bit of personal development and self-development.
Exactly.
And then speaking of which, now looking at the future of work, in fact, before we get to the future of work, there's a report I read this talk about, which was released by KPMG, and this is more on what really CEOs are keen about and really keen about. I just need you to chime in on that, because we've discussed it at length with you. In terms of post-pandemic, what really is the concerns among business leaders?
So there are many key concerns, but what rises to the top is the need to have people actively learning. So digital skills are key on the concerns of CEOs. And why I'm saying digital skills is the question that's now keeping people up post-pandemic is is my organization digital ready? Are my people digital ready? So we had this whole wave of digitization that ran from the late 90s into 2000s, where it was all about digitizing. But digital transformation is actually a shift in mindset, which came along with the 4th IR, which was, how do I as a person or I as an organization use technology to be more efficient? How does the person interact with technology to get this symbiotic relationship to be able to drive businesses ahead, and now to drive individuals ahead? And that wave is going across regardless of the industry. So that's alive. And CEOs are now really grappling with that and trying to understand, where am I? What are my maturity levels in as far as being digitally ready? And speaking of KPMG, that's something that they're helping their clients out to do now. And they're helping you understand, and it's different. Your maturity level in London, in the US, and in Africa is different. But the fourth IR has leveled the field. So you can no longer say, oh, I'm waiting for our head office in London to tell us what to do.
And the CEOs are not really profit-driven. I mean, we have a concern regarding mental health with the top leadership. Why is that a key concern?
So what's happening is, when the pandemic came, we saw a very steep rise in productivity of people, and because they're working from home. So you don't have the commute, you don't have to deal with certain issues that you were dealing with pre-pandemic. And that came with the working from home period. But what has started to happen is that you don't have that delineation between work and home. Yeah. You've brought work into the home, and they've become meshed together. And so what happens is you wake up at 5 a.m. and you're working throughout the day, and you don't have a stop time. What that means that we have led to burnout a lot quicker. Yeah. So mental health is becoming front and center of the discussion, and that being your overall wellness. If your mind is all right, then the rest of you will function just as well. And previously, you had this 8 to 5, you could clock out and go and take care of yourself. We didn't know that that's what you were doing. But now you don't have that. And so people need to actually be coached into that, and to be able to understand, these are the healthy balances, as it were, and how to then take care of yourself, because then your stresses are now fused, your work stress, your home stress, and all of this. So stress is a reality and a constant. And we always think of stress as being that point of breaking. But stress comes on you every day. When you're on the road and someone cuts you off, that elevates your stress, your cortisol levels rise. And so that's a stress factor. And they keep building up if we don't release them. And they come in different forms, And so that's why mental health is key for them, especially now when we can't connect and see and have those those conversations around how are you doing.
Sure. So look out for that report and many others, of course. I mean, the idea, of course, with the Headhunters is to keep your head and bring you up to speed with, current trends, reports, and particularly that on KPMG. Let's looking at the outlook, and I'm sure many others as well will release their outlook reports for the year. We're getting into an election season. How is now post-pandemic? Let's Kenyanize it a bit. So now post-pandemic and now with the elections, are we seeing any, trends or some stuff that we did not witness last year?
I don't think there will be a capital flight. And this is just my opinion. Yeah. What I think is that there will be more human capital flight. But because what you're worried about is the safety of being here and the unknowns. But I will still be able to hire from Kenya. I'll still be able to work from Kampala. I'm a Kenyan hire sitting in Kampala, working there, but delivering for a business sitting in Kenya. The only problem is different industries will be affected differently, the same way we saw throughout the pandemic. You had your transport sector, tourism sector greatly affected. You saw a rise in agricultural sectors. Is that going to change? People have to eat every day. Technology, again, saw a spike in anyone coming into that space. And so, again, we have to play it by ear. The beauty of it is that there's always a quick pickup, because they're very clear indicators of what the political pulse is. And businesses are able to pick up on that very fast. We've become used to that. So the difference in this year, I think, and it will be interesting to actually analyze these thoughts, because these are actually predictions, and see whether we were right or wrong, is that capital might stay, people will leave, but business will continue. We've
seen, during the pandemic, it's, more and more there's a need and a concern to actually create those safety nets, especially around the SMEs.
And you see now exactly what you've said. The bigger companies have built up capabilities over time. They're ready for this. SMEs are always fearful. SMEs count every coin and every shilling, and every shift in anything happening deals them a big blow. So resilience is a big thing that they need to develop. We had a guest on our show, an African Retooled, called Joram Winamo, and he started a project called Sandbox. And what he does there is he incubates SMEs, and he helps them with that resilience and being able to see the future and plan for it and plan for your growth. And so such people exist to help SMEs to be able to grow and understand what levers to pull and when to pull them. The when is the important thing. And so, yeah, I mean, SMEs can, call him up, reach out to Joram Winamo. He'll help you a lot.
I mean, you mentioned Joram. I think I know him from other circles as a twin dad. But he's quite interesting, especially when you listen to him speak. And I feel like he has a lot of work now more than ever because of that whole shift anyway. So moving aside from that, and I know we're slowly getting to the tail end of this program, Martin, I would not want you to go without just sharing your tidbits. And here is, encapsulating the future of work, looking at, the emerging trends that we're witnessing, seeing the CEO's concerns, seeing the need for jobs. I think part of the inspiration, of course, for starting such a conversation on KTN Home is to really inspire that crop of, the group that is always giving up and said, you know what, there are no jobs in the country, or I'm not finding opportunities, for instance. So personally, this will be like more of your wrap up to, give guidance to such folks as well, and to what we're witnessing in the industry today.
So one encouraging thing to take away is that there are opportunities to add value. And that's what work is going to become in the future of work. It's how do I add value to any process, to any value chain, to any business. And so I've been careful not to say there are opportunities to work, because work is work, but how am I adding value? And adding value is then what sets you apart from everyone else in your growth trajectory. Attitude is key. You must have a really good attitude. We hire for attitude. We'll train for technical. And every interview I've done, that is the fine line between the chaff, weeding out what won't work for us or what won't work for our clients, and those people we want to present to the client. How do you approach work? How do you approach the conversation of adding value to any business and any value chain? So those are the thinkings that we need to shift to, and not limiting ourselves to, I am a HR expert. HR is my place of interest, but how do I then make myself an all-rounder from the value proposition I bring to any business? So how do I understand what are your pain points? How can I add myself into your space and create value? And you can only know that by being hungry and understanding the spaces you want to enter. So my parting shot, as it were, would be hunger, attitude, and just seeking knowledge and trying to get connected.
Hunger, attitude, and just seeking knowledge. Notice me, I'm actually writing down these things. I think that's really interesting and a good way to wrap it up. So where can people find you? Where can you find Africa Retooled? I think it's a good opportunity to, grow more audience as well for yourself.
It's true, that's true. So we are on our website, www.africanretooled.org. And African Retooled is really a whole platform. So we have resources for people to help them reskill, retool, and understand their growth journey. So the podcast is but one pillar of what we are doing with African Retooled.
It will be interesting to ask you, where are you seeing more of your listenership? Like, who are interested in content? This is a worldwide program. I mean, when you put your stuff out there, I mean, it's, across the globe, but where are you seeing a keen interest in?
We have 1-2 people in Kazakhstan.
Oh, wow.
We have
Kenyan diaspora?
We don't know. You see, that's the thing.
That's good interest as well. Yeah.
The US is a big space.
Yes.
Kenya is a big space. Tanzania, not so much yet. Uganda is a big space.
Yeah.
South Africa, the Middle East, and all over the Middle East, we have listenership. We have Southeast Asia. We have some listenership. Australia, we have. So really, we are really globally spread. When I look at Kenya itself, we have a lot of listeners in Nakuru, funny enough, Nairobi and Mombasa. And so that was interesting for us, that Kisumu didn't have a lot of traction when you look at it. But this is the beauty of these platforms now. I can now actually have, and I can analyze where my listenership is. And I can do that even per episode and see, if I talk about the future of sales, I can see where people are listening, and I can target them and speak directly to them.
I mean, it's interesting, Martin, that you actually have great audience as Kenya and across the globe. I think the challenge now is really how to serve them up in the content, but they also seen an interest, because most of these international companies that want to set up shop in the country will rely on, ideas such as shared on Told, on the Headhunter, to really understand the people's space. Martin, always a pleasure having you on board. Thank you very much for creating time to be with us. And I'm sure you can all tell that we can only find this guest nowhere else but only on the Headhunter. I will share with you his profile earlier on the show as well. Please do reach out. Check out Africa Retooled as well. Listen to the podcast with Chris Otundo as well, a great man in the industry too. Thank you very much for being with us today on the Headhunter. As always, you can get this on our social media handles and, of course, repeat on KTN Home as well. For now, it's a goodbye and see you again next time. Cheers.